What's up, everybody? Brady Fugel here, coming at you with a review for the new Paleface Swiss album Curse that was released yesterday, Friday, January 3rd. The very first album review I'm doing of 2025, first of many, so if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, definitely hit the subscribe button because I will be reviewing a lot of albums this year. I've already got tons set up and ready to go. And this new Paleface Swiss record has been one that I've been very hopeful about, that it will give 2025 a great start as far as quality of music goes. I enjoyed all three of the singles, which I will talk about in the video, and it really did seem like they were striking that balance well of kind of new metal, late 90s, early 2000s new metal, and modern, maybe mid-2010s deathcore. That was just based on the singles and by this band's previous work, but I mean, I did not expect, listening to this album, I did not expect this album to be the late 90s new metal tribute album that it is. Like, seriously, I was really expecting this to be 50-50 as far as new metal and deathcore goes, but like, this album is pretty much at its core full-on new metal. The band has clear influence from several of those acts that I just mentioned in that time period, but most notably, I would say Slipknot is the most prominent one, which I think has already been widely acknowledged. And that's probably just because of how heavy this band's sound is, and Slipknot really was like the heaviest out of all, is the heaviest out of all the major names in the nu metal scene. And when you do have a sound like Paleface Swiss does on this album that is very clearly inspired by specific eras of music and specific bands even, you do run the risk of coming off as derivative and maybe unoriginal. But I would say for the most part on this record, especially due to the stylistic fusion that I was talking about earlier that actually goes further than what I mentioned, they do a pretty good job of avoiding those labels. Like, after you get through that ambient intro, Un Pobre Niño Murió, which translates to a poor child dying, pretty dark, which does have a very ominous horror-esque vibe to it, which I actually kind of enjoy. And that's saying something considering I'm always very critical about these pre-intro album or album outros or ambient interlude style track. But after you get through that, you get to the first proper track on here, as well as the first single, Hatred, which very much reeks of Slipknot in those bottom heavy riffs, especially that main one when it first kicks in after those chaotic screams and the vocal cadences and the fast double bass drums. So very Slipknot on this track, but there is those more deathcore and even straight up hardcore influences on this song, and those slower, sludgier breakdowns, especially around halfway through when it does slow down and get a bit more doomy. And the third track on here, And With Hope You'll Be Damned, is just pure Korn. Pure Korn. Like that main riff, which does bring that familiar element of dissonance that we know in Korn's music. Those verses, which are more laid back but also a bit more ominous and feature sort of just like those ranting style vocals. And then vocalist Mark Zellweger actually like gruffs up his voice a little bit and pretty much does full on scatting like Jonathan Davis does. But again, though, they do a good job on this song of having that clear influence without sounding like they're just straight up copying Korn. These first two proper tracks execute very well what Vendid and Chaosium failed to do with their albums, which is having clear influence from these bands, but still making it fresh, making it original, not sounding like they're copying the exact style of these bands. And the next track, Don't You Ever Stop, very much amplifies the not just deathcore, but especially hardcore influence with those really percussive guitars and those stopping breakdown sections. Dun-da, 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 dun-da. There's also like that last 30 seconds of the song that just keeps evolving as the song comes to an end, with those dissonant harmonic notes thrown in there, and then those like groove metal influenced riffs at the end. My Blood on Your Hands, which is also the second single off the record, definitely has more of, again, those modern hardcore and deathcore influences, although the song does start a bit more laid back and almost eerie sounding with those snaps. But when the music kicks in, it definitely is very clear that this is one of the more hardcore influenced tracks with a prominent use of breakdown riffs. There's some more ambient dissonance going on when the music first actually kicks in. There's also that real doomy outro riff. And it does kind of crack me up at the end when the vocals get kind of like, I don't know if I want to say like seductive. My blood on your hands. that kind of cringed me a little bit. But it's at the way end of the song, so I can forgive it a little bit. My favorite track on the album might still be the third single, Love Burns. This is one that takes those familiar elements that we've heard on the album so far, the rapid style vocals, the combination of the nu metal and the hardcore influence and the deathcore influence. But then the song ends with this clean vocal section, which has those really echoey background vocals and that just tortured sounding guitar lick that kind of floats over the more heavier percussive guitar riffs. I also really appreciate how the drums take on multiple different feels throughout the song, especially near the end when you do get that part I just mentioned repeating over and over. It helps the song feel a lot less repetitive and like it's still moving and progressing despite it being the same part pretty much the entire last third of the song. There's also the dark ballad on here, River of Sorrows, which is one that I also really enjoy. And although the chorus lyrics I do find to be a little bit juvenile, this is still a really enjoyable track, mainly in its mood. It just reeks of early 2000s, which is always something that appeals to me. But lyrics-wise, the verses definitely make up for it a little bit as they do use just some more creative word choice and more specific narrative-driven ideas. And the vocal performance on this song is great. I love how, again, the vocals sound like they have that element of real pain and sorrow and torture in them. There's also those moody sound effects that float over the main riff that almost make it sound like whispers in the wind, I guess would be a good way to put it. The vocal layering on the later choruses in this song, also really great. This actually shows that this band can really pull off clean vocals. Mark's performance on this song in particular with the clean vocals is probably my favorite out of his entire performance on this album. And given that he can pull off clean vocals like we see on this song, it also makes me really appreciate the rest of the album. How they don't use predictable song structures like the screen verses and the clean chorus. They still use creative and heavy song structures. If it was me on this song, I wouldn't have incorporated those nu metal rapping style vocals in that second verse. I just think that doesn't really fit the dark, tortured feel of the song. And going off of that, there's also that heavy part that comes in the bridge. It is a bit of a drastic mood shift, and it kind of comes out of left field a bit too much for me. But the rest of the song and its overall mood, I find myself really enjoying. So much that those criticisms I just had for the song end up being pretty forgivable. Really, as far as individual tracks, there's only two missteps on here, which is Youth Decay, which I do enjoy that intro thrash riff. I thought that was a nice addition to the album, but after you get past that, I find this song to be just a bit of filler. I don't think it's bad. I just think the ideas used on this song are used better in other songs on here. And then there's the song Enough. Yeah, I have nothing positive to say about the song, I'll just be honest. At least as far as actual content, because I do respect that they put this song in here as like a way to diversify the album a bit and keep you on your toes. I like the idea. I just really do not like the execution. As far as lyrics, these are some of the most like immature, surface level and cringy, juvenile lyrics on the whole album. I'd have this same criticism for any song that tackles the same theme of going after the haters. That just really bugs me, and it's just such a played out theme. And when you think about it, my philosophy with tackling haters is always to just ignore them and keep being yourself as a band and keep continuing your sound without acknowledging it. That's the way to do it. That's because you sound unbothered by it. When you actually go out of your way to address haters, you're giving them what they want at the end of the day. And instrumentally, like, God, that beat that carries the entire rap section of this song, that sounds like a high schooler's SoundCloud mixtape. That is just fucking awful. I really hate it. And even when the full band kicks in, like you get that jump the fuck up riff, which is pretty much straight up Limp Bizkit and is arguably the most derivative part on the entire album as far as the nu metal influences go. And I might just be saying that because I don't really like Limp Bizkit's music. But this song just, without question, has the most drab, underwhelming, and immature performances across the board on the whole album. So yeah, I really, really hate this song. But I at least appreciate the attempt at bringing in some diversity to this track list. But I mean, overall, this is a pretty good album. I mean, this one song does not drag the entire album down very much at all. And for the most part, this album is a great fusion of late 90s nu metal with modern hardcore and deathcore, and I have to salute them for pulling that off. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is the album that makes Paleface Swiss more of a well-known band in the scene. This album gets a 23 out of 30 for me. As always, thank you guys very much for watching. Feel free to subscribe for more rock and metal related content, and comment your thoughts on this album below. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace.